Archiving started.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Chapter 1, Medical Law and Ethics and Bioethics. Let me just turn this down a little bit. Okay. Most people will say, we're not going to be lawyers. Why do we have to study law and ethics and bioethics? But if you think about it, it is extremely important because many of the things that happen in a medical office or hospital or clinic setting could result in a lawsuit. So it does become important. Hang with me for a second. I'm going to try to make this a little less loud. Okay. So, if you think about it, illegal is almost always unethical, but not always. And the best example that I could come up with was the civil rights movement. There were certainly illegal things that were done during the marches, but they were not unethical. So you have to understand that the law as it applies to medical practice is essential. It helps protect patients truly from poor medical care for the most part. It also helps protect the employee and the employer from lawsuits, depending upon the way the situation opens and closes. It assists all medical professionals in making decisions based on reason and logic rather than just emotion, because let's face it, we live in what we call a litigious society, which means people who like to bring lawsuits. Now, going on to the next slide, medical law, a few key points here. It addresses the legal rights and obligations that do affect patients and protect individual rights, including the rights of any healthcare employees. And it gives a yardstick to measure or judge those actions. And as a result, if something is proven to be unlawful, it will punish any unlawful actions. The laws are rules or actions prescribed by a government authority that have a binding legal force. That's a good definition to remember. Medical Practice Act regulates how medicine is practiced in each state. It may be somewhat different in each state, but it provides the legal definition for the practice of medicine in that state. And it lists requirements and methods for licensure. Some people have reciprocity, which means if you are licensed in one state and you have met all of the legal points that have to be met, the next state will allow you to practice because they're saying, well, we don't have anything that's any different than your state, so we will have reciprocity or we'll be reciprocal in allowing you to practice. But it does depend. It doesn't happen in every state. Some states will still require that a new medical professional coming in needs to retest, for example. And it does constitute what unprofessional conduct is very clearly. Ethics, good definition here too, branch of philosophy that relates to moral principles and moral judgment. Morality is being virtuous, practicing the right conduct, trying to do the right thing, and it uses reason and logic to analyze solutions and to try to find problems to them. It's concerned with the actions and practices that improve the welfare of people in a moral way. Somebody said what's ethical and moral, pretty much that's constitutes what a great definition is. Medical ethics are things that are concerning any issues that are related to the practice of medicine, explores and promotes principles guiding conduct of healthcare professionals, very clearly guides them, and it involves the welfare and consideration of others in deciding how should they act. For example, let's say you are in a situation where you observe someone doing something wrong. Is it ethical and moral for you to report it? Well, the answer is clearly yes. It doesn't matter whether it's a good friend of yours or not. It is important that everyone is held to the same standard. Utilitarianism, it's the greatest good for the greatest number. It's the impact of actions on welfare as a whole, a society as a whole, rather than just the individual, which means basically it is the practice of the end justifies the means. We don't really live in this kind of society, but this is what the definition of it is. Moving on down a little further, a good example would be Medicare. What are some of the weaknesses? Well, some people, such as the poor, the ill, the very old, and even sometimes, depending upon the race, may be ignored, and that's not right. It can result in biased allocations, meaning it's more in one area than another, and it virtually is impossible to quantify all the variables, but they change like we change our underwear. The vulnerable ones are the very young, sick, or handicapped. They may be ignored in this type of a society, which is why we don't have it. If we did, and Medicare was under this type of a society that we were governed by, it wouldn't be so fun. Now, what are rights-based ethics? The rights belong basically to all people, and the weakness of it is an individual, if somebody is even a certain group is particularly selfish, or we have anarchists that fight against an area that we believe in, or some sort of a policy that we believe in. It is a weakness, and it can destroy individual rights. Now, what are duty-based ethics? Performed on duty, it focuses performed on our duty to do it. Sometimes you can have a conflicting opinion about duty. It differs depending upon the role. For example, the RN, the physician assistant, the MD, the medical assistant, the lab person, it all depends. And you're going to find out that as we go along, that the top of the pile here, respondeat superior, or let the master answer, is the one who basically is responsible at the end of the day. So the professional role does matter. So all ethical considerations should be made, understanding that you may be held responsible, but somebody above you may also. So the weakness of it, it's difficult to know who determines one's duty unless it's clearly written. Moving on to justice-based ethics. A veil of ignorance, what is it? It allows decision makers to be impartial to their decisions. That's good. A weakness, it may be unfair for the health to subsidize the unhealthy. Think about that. Due to media coverage and huge healthcare systems, it is kind of impossible to have a veil of ignorance because we have so many ways to get information these days with the internet and our smartphones and the television and all the different news stations, it's almost impossible to not know about something and then be able to hear the pros and cons about it and judge it. That's what a veil of ignorance would be. What about virtue-based ethics? It's the emphasis here is placed on people, not decisions or principles, and it's based on character traits such as integrity. More about virtue-based ethics. They're good habits, that's fair, honest, courageous, and very full of justice, seeking the good life, trying to do the right thing. Those are the pluses. A minus or a weakness would be a person can become complacent, set in their ways, thinking everyone's going to do the right thing, very trusting, and it unfortunately doesn't always work that way. Some of the values that drive ethical behavior are listed here. Perseverance, one of my favorite quotes is, perseverance provides prosperity. So if you keep trying, eventually it's going to work, basically. Responsibility, sanctity of or respect for life is certainly ethical. Tolerance, work ethics, and how one goes about their daily life is important. Now, on the other side, beneficence. How are you feeling about what you have to judge? How honest and true are you? Are you gentle? Fidelity or humility and the justice of it all. Those are the things that drive ethical behavior. Interpersonal ethics are, and we've talked about respect before, respect for sure, integrity, honesty, empathy, sympathy, being fair and honest, loyal, and having compassion. Those are interpersonal ethics. So now, what about workplace issues? Well, privacy or confidentiality. You're going to find in this class that is major. If you go by an open door and someone has a computer facing you and you're able to view someone's medical history, is that a breach of confidentiality? Yes. If two people are talking in an elevator about a patient in room 110, bed B, and you happen to have that patient as a family member, but you're along in the elevator for a ride, is that a breach of confidentiality? You bet. Due process. The workplace has to be free from sexual harassment, and there has to be comparable work. There is a 7-step model, and it kind of is kind of one of these things for examining ethical dilemmas. And this is for anything that you read in class as the cases are presented to you or ones that you have to look up. Ask yourself these questions. Can you determine the facts? Can you define the precise ethical issue? Can you identify the major principles, rules, and values? Is there an alternative? Can you compare them, a value and the alternative? Can you assess the consequences? Were they just? Can you make a decision? I taught this class twice last quarter, and I had a very interesting thing happened. I had several students that took the cases that were presented to them or that they had to look up. And they would present all 7 steps, in order. And then in black ink, and then in red ink, kind of indented, they would put their own personal feelings and assessments. It was quite interesting, and I really enjoyed it. It was an awesome way to read a paper. I encourage you to do that. Dr. Bernard Low's clinical model. 3 things. Gather the information, clarify, decide what ethical issues are, and resolve the dilemma. Again, this is a non-trivial. kind of a dull moment. We didn't need this guy to tell us this, but he was the one who gets the credit for these three pretty common ways to solve a problem. The three-step ethical method or model. Is it legal? Is it balanced? Does one person or group benefit more, or does one suffer more than as a result of your actions? Or how does it make me feel? Am I embarrassed? Am I proud? Etc. So what ethics is not? It's not just about how you feel. It's not about sincerity or belief. It's not about an emotional response, and it's not only about religious belief. So what are bioethics? Well, there are bioethicists, which are specialists in the field of bioethics. We will get more into this towards the third part of our quarter, where we decide about stem cells, we talk about stem cells, etc., and advanced directives and following the right to life questions, etc. But bioethics is more about moral dilemmas and issues resulting from advanced medicine and research relating to life, like cloning, gene therapy, stem cells. There are ethics committees in most places that will examine all ethical issues relating to patient care, and they contain a variety of members from different disciplines, so that it's not all, the scale is not unbalanced. They can serve in an advisory capacity to patients and families and staff if there's an ethical issue, and they can develop and review healthcare policies and guidelines regarding the same issues of ethics that should arise. So now, what's quality assurance? I've been involved with this, and it's quite interesting. It's where you gather and evaluate information about services. You examine the results, kind of a statistical game that's played, and then you compare information against a standard. And then lastly, for this chapter 1, medical etiquette, what is it all about? Certain rules and standards about professional behavior should be followed for all branches of practice, whether it's physicians in their relationship to other physicians, or physicians in their relationship with nurses or lab people. And a best example that the book Fremgen will give you is that a call from a doctor, from one doctor to another, should be taken promptly unless there's an emergency situation that should come up. But other than that, that's all I have to say about Chapter 1. You let me know if you have any questions, and we will go from there. How's that sound? Take care. Have a great day.